Hello, welcome back. Hopefully you guys can find this right now. Hello guys, hey, new stream is up. Sorry for the delay. It took a minute to get the Wi-Fi to turn off, and the one issue that I had was that because it was disconnecting the other stream while I was switching from Wi-Fi to mobile data, it made it so that the initial stream did not close properly, and then I was having a little bit of difficulty causing it to end. So what I had to do is delete the partial stream that we started the meeting with today, but there wasn't too much done in those few minutes. Basically, all I told you guys was to be on the lookout for the distribution of the study guide this weekend through Titanium, and I was also letting you guys know that I'll be finished with the grading of the first essay this weekend as well. Sorry for the little bit of delay. These things do happen, of course, during the times of online learning. It has nothing to do with the platform or anything. It's just the Wi-Fi connection. Sometimes, for whatever reason, in these early morning hours, it seems to be the more common time when Spectrum goes out for like a few minutes. And when it does, the bandwidth that you need for these type of meetings, it just drops out. So then I have to switch over to mobile data, which we're on now. So anyway, guys, thanks again for being here. I'm going to send a quick message through Titanium to the other members of the class just to notify them that we're on live and that they should come back. So just give me a couple minutes to get everything established and we'll be good to go. But for the time being, welcome back. Thanks, guys, for being patient. And, just got to take it in good humor because this is just part of life in 2021, I guess. Okay. Okay, cool. So I see about 20 of us have arrived, 27 actually now, and I just sent off a Titanium message to kind of help get as many people back to the meeting as possible. So thanks again, guys. Sorry for that. Let's just go forward now from where we were. Okay, good morning again. So what I was trying to say is that in Garrett Hardin's paper, he starts by attacking the metaphor of Spaceship Earth. He doesn't like the Spaceship Earth metaphor. Why not? First of all, what is it? It was a metaphor that was common among environmentalists of his time. And the idea was we live on a spaceship Earth. So since we live on spaceship Earth, we should all take care of it together and not use, waste, or destroy more than our fair share of the world's resources. So it's kind of like a call for sharing, moderation in our consumer and consumption habits. But he says this is a bad metaphor because if we really took it seriously, that would mean that it would imply that we all have an equal right to an equal share. But if that was so, then the people who've accumulated greater wealth or the nations and institutions that have accumulated greater wealth would no longer have that additional prosperity, and it would undermine their well-being. And he also says that if there were a true spaceship Earth, there'd be a captain or some type of governing authority that dictates its course. But on the planet Earth, there's no such thing as a leader of the whole planet. There's a bunch of sovereign nations. The United Nations is not a true international or global authority. So instead of the spaceship Earth metaphor, he advances his whole lifeboat metaphor, which is to say, suppose each wealthy country is symbolized by a lifeboat floating in the sea. The passengers on the boats are the citizens of those nations. And then suppose you have a more numerous group of people in the water that are struggling to stay afloat and survive. Well, what should we do if, say, we have 50 in our boat, there's space for 60, but yet there's 100 out there in the water? He says if you took all 100 on board, it would cause the boat to sink, so that's not wise. If you took on just 10, you'd still be able to take 10 and you have room for them, but now the boat would be filled up to its maximum capacity, which undermines the safety, security of the boat and its current passengers. So he advises instead to be very harsh, not let anyone on, and guard against those that would board without permission. Afterwards, he mentions the different reproductive rates that exist in the first and third world, basically that reproductive rates, birth rates are much higher, and population doubles in size much more rapidly in the third world. So he thought that if we assigned ourselves an obligation to assist the poor, even if today we had a setup where there's 300 million wealthy donors, 300 million poor recipients, if these birth rate statistics are to be believed, then over, let's say, an 87-year period, which is how long it would take for the wealthy cohort to double in size, the poor cohort of recipients would have doubled, redoubled, and halfway doubled a third time. So he thinks that this makes it impossible for us to actually set up such assistance or charitable giving without essentially making the problem worse by feeding into the population overgrowth of the third world, which is part of what he thinks causes the scarcity. So there's just this last couple of points. After that, he talks about what's called the tragedy of the commons. Now, I've noticed that whenever I go to mobile data, which is what I'm on right now, there's a little less high definition to the image because we're going off of 5G instead of a normal Wi-Fi connection. So basically what I want to do then is type some of these notes into the chat since I have that little limitation today of bandwidth. So he talks about this idea called the tragedy of the commons. And I'm just writing down the definition. Good to see you guys. Sorry for our little technical difficulties earlier, but no problem. Tragedy of the commons. So it's the idea that public resources inevitably fail due to overuse and poor maintenance unlike private resources. Okay. Sorry, I may have misspelled the word maintenance, but either way, tragedy of the commons. It's this idea that you see there typed in the chat, that public resources will inevitably fail due to overutilization and poor maintenance, poor upkeep. And that's not what happens with private resources. So this is a kind of principle that he thinks helps to assist his argument a little bit. He gives an example to make the point. So suppose that we had an acre of farmland, like 1 acre that can be used by farmers for grazing for their animals. Now suppose that that acre of farmland is opened up to the public, so it becomes available to any member of the public that wants to use it. No restrictions on access, it's just there for whoever would like. So if that was the case, he says, here's what you would expect to see. Everybody would quickly bring their animals to the acre, so everyone would want to make use of the public resource, because why not? It's not exclusive to some and not others. So everyone would bring their animals, it would quickly be overgrazed, and then it would destroy the quality of the acre for future use. So not only would too many people bring too many animals, but also he says nobody would do their bit to take care of it and clean up after themselves, and maintain it so that it would be sustainable into the future. Because he thinks, why would a person that's a member of the public be so tidy and careful in the way they, maintain the acre? After all, it's not their property, and if it falls into disuse, and if it looks very messy, it doesn't reflect poorly on any individual member of the public that has used it. So with public resources, he says, human beings being what we are, wanting to take the most, yes, this is still about Garrett Hardin. Thanks, Alessandra. I'm just wrapping up his notes. There's just a few last points. But yeah, Garrett Hardin, Tragedy of the Commons. He says that this is in a way tragic, but it's based on certain aspects of human nature. Humans being what we are, we want to exploit a resource for our maximum potential benefit at the least personal cost to ourselves. So if you gain access to the commons and you don't get any greater access to it, whether you are careful and tidy or whether you are, just reckless and messy, then what would be the motive that you would have to do that additional work? It's almost like you're the loser in a commons if you are the one kind of, responsible party who takes care of it and cleans up after yourself. Take, for example, public versus private restrooms. Just speaking from my own experience as a guy, a lot of times these public restrooms are quite dirty and disgusting. People will just throw things on the floor, and that's, leaving faucets running. And that's just tip of the iceberg of how gross some of these can be. But why are they like that? Well, it's because it's a public restroom, so a person knows it's not their own property. It's probably like on a private household, you would not throw a paper towel on the ground in your own house because you have to live with it and it's your property. And if it looks that disgusting, it reflects poorly on you, the owner. But with public resources, everyone has an incentive to utilize them, but no one has an incentive to do their part to take care of them. So he says we should not be willing to support such public resources as those. Why does he say this in the course of his argument? Because in his mind, he's thinking about the World Food Bank. So the World Food Bank is a program that was kind of new back then in the 70s, but it's been around for a while now. And what it is an international system of humanitarian aid to the third world poor, where wealthy nations can contribute to the food bank according to their surplus amounts, and poor nations can draw from the World Food Bank according to their needs. So he thinks this sounds nice and it's well intended, perhaps, but in his view, it's another commons that's also doomed to fail, like he thinks all commons are. Because it's a publicly available resource, this store of food in the World Food Bank, so nations will feel free to draw from it because it's there for all to use. But none of them, he thinks, will do their part to wean themselves off of it by reaching a higher standard of developed living and starting to moderate their birth rates. So he thinks that that's going to make sure that in some future date, the cohort of poor people using this World Food Bank will just grow too large to further support, at which time we'll have an even bigger problem and less means to take care of it, since global resources dwindle over time. Now, that's what he says. He thinks that sometimes those that provide vocal support and advocacy for the World Food Bank are big businesses and special interests, and he thinks that those are sometimes the true beneficiaries of such programs. For example, rail and shipment companies that have to ship the food aid from point A to B, and the administrators who staff the bureaucracies of these aid institutions and agencies have a vested interest in perpetuating those systems, even if you think they might not make an impact or a positive difference in the long run. So, so he's advising against such programs as the World Food Bank on the basis that they are another example of a commons, which he says predictably would always fail. I don't know if I mentioned the other side of that 1 acre analogy, but like, right, if it was a private owner, the private owner would not want to put too many animals on his own acre for it to handle. Because imagine if he overloaded it and then destroyed it, it would then be his loss of the value of his own investment. So when people own things privately, unlike public resources, they have every motivation to make sure that those things don't fall into disrepair or ruin and to take care of them well. So he doesn't think public resources are going to work out, even if they may have a humanitarian basis behind them. In the end, he doesn't think they really do anyone a good service, since they serve to artificially inflate the population of the third world, which is part of the problem, according to him. At the very end of his paper, he talks a little bit about immigration and stuff, and I'm sure you can kind of guess, based on his other views, that he's one of those people who says there should be very strict immigration controls, and he produces similar reasons for that. He says when you allow permissive immigration policies, then you're allowing more poor people from the third world into the first world. And in that case, sorry, 1 second. Yeah, so in that case, we're degrading the quality of life of our own country by allowing more people in. I don't know why he says that, though, and so I have to kind of take a sidebar to make some comments of my own. You know, it's a nation of immigrants. Unless you're like descended from Native people, Native Americans, indigenous people, all of us have ancestors that have come here from other places. So if it's a nation of immigrants, I'm not sure how he can take this position that permissive immigration policies somehow degrade the quality of life of current U.S. citizens or current citizens of the first world. It seems like he's kind of harboring uncharitable assumptions about the composition of a country when it has more diversity. So that's something I just can't really agree with. But in the end, he kind of takes note of people who have this opposed view. He says some people will condemn his position as overlooking the fact that this is a nation of immigrants. But he says that that's kind of overly idealistic and unrealistic. He says if we wanted to be purely just and righteous, then probably the virtuous thing would be to give back this land to Native Americans, because there was no moral basis for the transfer of ownership from those individuals to European colonizers and settlers. But he says, of course, nobody takes seriously the idea of giving this land back to Native Americans. So he says that we can't redo the past. Maybe some things happened in the past, of course, that were unfair, but he says those are just the facts of life that we have to accept. And until we really live on a spaceship Earth, where there is a central governing authority over everything, then instead of the spaceship Earth metaphor, we should operate on a lifeboat ethics metaphor. At least that's what he said. He didn't do, I don't think, a very good job in his paper of addressing objections to his arguments. At one point, he talks about an objection that is derived from an old Chinese proverb or saying, which says, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, but teach a man how to fish and he'll eat for, you know, the rest of his days. The basic moral of that little phrase is that you should let people learn how to develop their own skills so they'd be more self-sufficient instead of just providing them with the means that they need for survival. And so that could be seen as an objection. What about, okay, don't give food aid if you think that that's just going to bloat out the population size of these countries and not bring them to a higher living standard. Why not just help them with technological educational assistance so that they can make strides towards developed standard of living on their own? I think that's a great objection, but for whatever reason, Garrett Hardin just kind of ignores the point, and he says, yeah, but that will still cause their populations to get bigger, which is going to feed into the problem yet again. But I don't know why he would say that. I would have thought the whole point of providing technological educational assistance would have been to help these countries along towards a first world or developed standard of living. And if they did, then they would join the ranks of the first world nations and start to reproduce slower, just as we see all the wealthier nations. So, you know, some of the assumptions he makes in his paper, I feel like, are not fair. I also think it's kind of weird how he kind of ambiguously floats between like anti-immigration arguments and anti-aid to the poor arguments, like as though they're the same thing, but they're really not. But anyway, there you go. We have to always discuss all the views that are out there. And Garrett Hardin, you know, his views, whether they're right or wrong, they've had some impact. I would say this about him. This type of literature and philosophy on this kind of don't help the poor subject matter, I think it's kind of like an intellectual ancestor of a lot of these heated political debates that you hear going on in our country and in our domestic politics, you know, like all this build a wall, anti-immigrant type rhetoric and just care about ourselves and don't worry about the third world. I mean, a lot of that rhetoric, of course, to me is overly heated. It's not intellectual, it's not academic, and a lot of it just is thinly veiled, you know, bigotry really, or racism. But if I was looking for kind of a more academic presentation of those arguments, then I would probably refer instead to like a Garrett Hardin than some of our current day politicians who are using these types of reasonings, but of course embellishing and adding a lot of hot rhetoric to it. Anyway, though, so we've heard from Hardin and Singer. Now we're ready to move to the next author. So I just had these kind of closing thoughts to add to our discussion. It took a little longer than I had hoped, but that's because we had our disconnection problems at the beginning. So not to worry though, we're all good to go now. So Garrett Hardin, I wanted you to know about the tragedy of the commons and then the discussion that follows after that in the end of the paper. So now one more essay in the first half of this semester before we get ready for the midterm and everything. This is an essay that's written by an American woman philosopher named Judith Jarvis Thomson. So that's her name. I guess forgetting that the screen is not that easy to read, so let me type that. Thank you, guys. Judith Jarvis Thomson. So just so that you guys know, she lived from 1929 until 2020. She died in November of last year. So the last time I taught this, I was telling people she's got amazing longevity, still out there, but rest in peace, just passed away. This is a paper of hers from 1974, and no, sorry, 1985. Thank you. I was thinking of the other paper that we just read, and it's called The Trolley Problem. Okay, so what I put in the notes in the chat, right, is just her name, the dates of her life, and then the dates that this essay was published and the title. Okay, so just about her. She's a very well-known, famous American philosopher, and she taught for many decades at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She's very well known in the field for having extremely detailed and complex hypothetical scenarios to advance her arguments. So she's very creative and skilled in the utilization of those kind of hypotheticals and thought experiments. One paper that she wrote in 1971 has kind of become a classic, famous paper. It's called A Defense of Abortion. So you got to think of the context in society. The Roe versus Wade, the landmark Roe versus Wade Supreme Court decision, that was handed down, I believe, in 1973 or 4. And she was part of a growing wave of academics and ethicists and medical professionals writing literature and arguments to try and make the case that abortion is morally permissible and therefore it should be fully legal. And that did, of course, culminate with the decision of Roe versus Wade. But she was one author that wrote a famous paper that made the argument for pro-choice. But anyway, this paper has nothing to do with abortion or that type of ethics debate. If you ever want to read it, though, I'm sure if you ever studied a contemporary moral issues class here at Fullerton or anywhere, if abortion was one of the topics, then you'd definitely read her essay because it's considered a classic in that literature. But anyway, guys, so the trolley problem, that's the paper for us today. And the nature of this paper is it's an exploration of a little puzzle about our intuitions concerning killing versus letting die. What Judith Thompson shows us in this paper is that the everyday common sense reaction that we have to when it's right or wrong to either kill or let die is all kind of confused and mixed up. So on the one hand, we can be given an example in which we say, this action would be wrong. And then another example can be presented, which is very similar to the first one, but the overall reaction to it is that this is not wrong. So our moral intuitions about killing and letting die are somewhat confused and inconsistent. And through these examples involving trolley scenarios, we're supposed to be able to disentangle and clarify what we really think about killing versus letting die. So let's just jump into it. This is a paper that does rely, as I was kind of hinting at, heavily on the use of hypothetical scenarios. So you guys are not new to that game by now. You've heard a lot of different hypothetical scenarios. Hey, suppose there was a kid drowning in a pond and you were walking by. Or suppose you're walking around in the woods and you saw a sphere. Okay, so there's tons of these. And here we have a couple more. So just bear with me as I try to explain them. So the first scenario, and I'm going to use the board a little here because I kind of have to draw some almost cartoon scenes for you to understand her cases. I know that the bit rate or whatever bandwidth might not be amazing right now, but just try your best to see what I'm saying and I'll describe it too. So this case, we're going to call it Trolley Driver. Trolley Driver. And so imagine this. Here's a trolley. Okay. And here's a guy that's the driver of the trolley. Here's like a little control panel area. Now this trolley is going forward. So that's an arrow showing its forward trajectory. And it's going forward on this track. All right. So far, pretty normal. But unfortunately, I guess, something's bad. We have 5 people over here on the track that are ahead of the trolley, which is moving towards them. So you see these 5 guys here, and the trolley approaching from this side. So what we have is this trolley that's bearing down on the people that are on that track. And on its current trajectory and path, it's going to smack into all 5 of them, and it's going to kill all 5 of them, which is a terrible thing. That's a significant loss of human life, 5 people dead from the trolley impact. So we don't want that. That's not good. So we would hope that this guy could hit the brakes and stop the trolley before it gets there. But unfortunately, right now, these brakes are not working. So it seems like, they're doomed. But there's one thing that could be done. Okay, guys? So there's this fork in the track, a little separate stretch of the track. And he has a switch here with him in his control area, which if he flips the switch, it diverts the trolley from this course to the other course. And so, great, if he hits the switch, then trolley goes up on this tangent, and these guys are spared and they don't get killed. So you'd love to see that happen. But there's just one other small issue, and that is that on that side of the track, there is still one person, though. Okay? So now think about this, guys. If he doesn't touch the switch, this trolley's going to plow into 5 people and kill them all. If he does hit the switch, then it won't hit those 5, it'll go in the other direction, but it'll still hit one person. But 1 is way less than 5. So just understand there's no way the trolley can be stopped. That's already too far gone. The trolley cannot be stopped. So one of two things is going to happen. The trolley's going to kill 5 people when it hits them, or if he hits the switch, it's just going to kill 1 instead. So then this is the question that's given to not just you, but to thousands and thousands of people before you, because this example has been used as a sort of experiment of people, a test of people's moral intuitions, to gauge people's moral common sense. So I'm going to ask you the same question that's been asked to thousands and thousands of other people in research settings, in academic settings, just like this, more formal research. What do you think? Would it, if this trolley driver flips the switch so that it goes not towards 5, but rather towards the other side, 1? And here, let's make sure nobody's getting confused. Don't say, why can't they just move off the trolley track and then no one gets hurt? We just have that baked into the case, because we're trying to get you to consider the question about the choice he's going to have to face. So we can't escape the parameters of the hypothetical scenario by saying, maybe the people could run away or anything else. Also, you're not supposed to make any special assumptions like, oh, these are 5 criminals and this is someone's best friend. No, these are just different people, but they're totally all just unknown people to the driver and to everybody else. So we just assume they're just normal citizens, okay? So here's that question again, and let me know in the chat. Wrong or not wrong, morally permissible or impermissible for our driver to flip the switch? And I'll say this, there's an overwhelming consensus view that almost everybody has on this, but I'll wait for your reaction. So the question again is, if he should flip the switch, would that be okay or no? And flipping the switch, what it does is it prevents this trolley from hitting everybody. Instead, it just hits 1. Okay, Stephanie, morally permissible. Good. I would say, well, I don't want to spoil the spoiler or whatever, but everybody seems to agree with that. Okay, same Denise, same Naaman. Yeah, so you're in good company. I know you might be a little shy. You don't want to volunteer an opinion on something that's, kind of out there like a trolley running away. But most people don't find it wrong at all. And I mean, I could explain to you why that seems to be the majority overwhelming position, because if you actually look at these polls, and I might even send you guys a video, because there's a video of one of our editors of this book, our textbook, Tamar Gendler. She's a professor at Yale of philosophy, and she has a tape lecture that's on YouTube of her lecturing on the trolley problem. And she has clickers for everyone in the audience, big auditorium, class size, 150 people. And she just surveys them on these various cases, and you see in real time, bar graphs that show the percentile of reactions. And it's up in the 90th percentile, this response. Most people seem to agree with your finding that it's not wrong to flip the switch. Let's try and ask the question, though, of why. Why do you think people don't find that to be wrong? Or another way of putting it, that it is okay? Why would you say that, morally speaking, this is not wrong, it is permitted? Why so? Just question for you. Less people die. Yeah, pretty simple. I mean, not to overthink it much, but it's just, if this trolley is a runaway trolley and it's bound to hit people and it's bound to kill people, why would anyone think that it's wrong to just try and prevent the greater amount of death? I mean, we're talking life and death. If these are people here, then 5 deaths is way worse than 1. These are people with families, friends, future dreams, hopes, plans. So 5 is, 500% more than 1. And it's a tragedy for the 1, but it's still less than 5. So most people just feel like as long as this trolley is going to have to hit people and there's nothing that could be done about that, averting the larger loss of life is not wrong. Some people would even go further and say not only is it not wrong, but you ought to do it. It's an obligation even. But either way, most people don't think that it's wrong. Okay, small minority maybe, but most people don't. Okay, so that's case 1, the trolley driver. Keep that in mind. But we're not done yet, because the trolley problem is not just the trolley driver case and then the question, is it wrong or not? Some people, when I ask this question, if I ask it on the midterm or whatever, tell me what's the trolley problem. This is not the right answer. Someone says, hey, a trolley's going to hit 5 people, but you could switch it to 1. What do you do? It's not that simple, because the real trolley problem has to do with comparing the audience's reaction to this case with their reaction to a different case. Okay, so we have to mention both cases in order to even state what the trolley problem is. So now let's talk about the other example. The other example is transplant. Now, I don't know if you remember, but we actually, I think, talked about transplant briefly in a prior meeting when we were going over possible objections to utilitarianism. If you do remember, one of the objections to utilitarian theory was that it seems like it's, at least in principle, that no action is totally forbidden. Because even if it was like murder of an innocent person, I said, what if one innocent person could be killed to save 5 lives by using their organs? And most people would say that's wrong. But anyway, that's just to remind you about this case. Let me just repeat it though. Say we got 5 people. Here they are. Just me drawing stick figures for the sake of convenience. So here's 5 people, and they have medical problems. Basically, each one has a failing vital organ, and they urgently need transplants, or else they will die without the transplants. But the thing is, they each have a different organ that is needed. So one person needs like a heart transplant, one person needs a liver transplant, kidney, the other kidney, and I don't know, lung. So 5 different vital organs each one needs, and if they don't get those transplants soon, they're imminently facing death. Now, they go to this doctor guy who's trying to help them with the donor, someone to find a transplant donor for them. There's a doctor guy. And there's something pretty convenient about their situation, as sad as it is that they're all sick. They all have the same very rare blood type, okay? So let's say that this blood type is so rare, it's XXX blood, highly rare. Now, right now, some of you might be thinking, well, if it's so rare, how do all 5 of them have it? It's a coincidence. So that's that. Don't worry about that, okay? So anyway, 5 people, failing organs, different failing organs, all have the same unique rare blood type. Now, why is that a convenient thing? Because since they all have the same blood type and they all need different organs, in theory, how many donors would you need to save their 5 lives? Well, if you had one appropriate blood match, then that one person could be utilized to save all of their lives by using all of their different organs, okay? So he's looking through the donor lists, you know, searching high and low, trying to find that one XXX match. And he's not finding anybody because I told you it's very rare. So anyway, nothing's turning up, and it looks like he's going to have to give up on this goal of finding a suitable donor for them. And he's preparing himself to go in there and give them the tough news. I'm sorry, guys, but I can't do anything for you. But right as he's going to do that, in off of the street comes a young, healthy person right there, like you or me, or just, you know, a normal, young, healthy person who doesn't really have any basic medical problems. So why are they there? They're only there kind of proactively for like a normal routine physical or something, just to check and see if everything's going well, but they don't have any medical ailments that they know of, okay? So they're basically healthy. And he's got a moment free before he returns to speak to this group. So he's just gonna check out this person's medical chart and information first. And okay, some of you guys, you know, very insightful film watchers or readers of novels, you can maybe anticipate a plot twist or the next development in a film or a novel. Who could guess what this man discovers when he looks to this person's medical information? What do you think? Where is this going? I bet you can guess. Yes, he does have the same blood type. That's right, Kobe. So as he's looking at this guy's information, he notices that. He says, oh my goodness, this guy has the XXX blood. Wow, what a coincidence. That's really, really rare. So, you know, he's thinking some thoughts. I mean, this guy could be the donor, basically. So he talks to him. He says, I want to ask you some basic, actually, they're not very basic. These are weird questions. And there's no easy way to say it, so I'm just going to be very blunt. We've got 5 people over here in the next ward. They're all dying of different type of, you know, various organ failures. And the thing is, they all have this very hard to find blood type. They're looking for donors, which could save their lives, but we're having a hard time finding anybody. Well, then the thing is, sir, you walked in, and it's almost like divine intervention. You know, you came into the office today randomly, and as it turns out, you have the matching blood. I mean, you have XXX blood. So, look, I'm just going to throw this out there at you. So let me know what you think. What would you say, would it be okay with you if I was to take all your organs out and just distribute them to the 5 people here? And let's just be totally clear, you would never survive that because you're going to be gutted pretty much. You know, all your various vital organs will be removed. But you will die. But 5 people will live instead. And so I mean, I know that's a big sacrifice, but you'd be like a hero, and that 5 is greater than 1. I mean, so think about it. If we don't take your organs out, then you'll live, but 5 will die. And so that's a minus 4 in terms of how many human beings survive. You take your life, 5 live, that's plus 4. We let you live, 5 die, that's minus 4. So what do you think? Would you be okay with that or no? Now, if this person is anything like you or me or just any of us, right, you already know what the response would be. Something like, I'm sorry, no way. I'm not trying to die. I have every right to live. These organs are mine. I'm sorry for the fact they're sick. I wish they weren't. But, I can't be used for that purpose. I have every right to live. So no way can I accept that. Now, suppose that the doctor after that is like, okay, then he just kills them and takes the, organs by force and gives it to the other 5. If he did that, we'll get to you, Sebastian, because you're trying to diagnose the solution, but let's hold on so everyone knows the problem first. I have a question, so let's hear my question. Would that be wrong or no, according to your just common sense? Would it be wrong or not for him to kill that one person and use those organs to save 5? So first we got to establish the audience's response. Wrong or not wrong for the doctor to kill this guy and take his organs, give them to 5 people? I'm just asking that question. Is this wrong? Is this morally permissible or is it impermissible to do that, according to you? Okay, good. Wrong. Yes, wrong. And don't worry, everyone thinks it's wrong. So you're in good company again. It's almost the universal reaction of everyone that this is wrong to do. But here now the problem of the trolley problem starts to come into focus. The real trolley problem is this question. Why is it that almost everybody says this action of the driver is not wrong? Intervening to prevent their 5 deaths and the action taken leads to the death of 1. But nobody, or at least almost nobody, thinks this is wrong. But almost everybody thinks that this is wrong. Now, why is that puzzling? Because people have different reactions to the 2 scenarios, but if you look at them, beneath some of those surface differences, there are some basic similarities structurally between the 2 scenarios. So what are the similarities, basically? Well, in both examples, you have 5 people at imminent risk of death from something. And you have 1 person present on the scene who could intervene in such a way that would avoid the 5 deaths and cause the death of a different person. And, oh yeah, so I was gonna actually type that out in a minute, but I'll do it now, Kobe, not to worry. So, trolley problem. So, trolley problem, why do most people feel that the action taken by driver is permissible, but the action taken by surgeon is impermissible? Okay, so I just wrote that there in the chat. Question, and the trolley problem is a question. It's this question. Why is it? What is the reason underlying the fact that most people feel that the action of the driver is okay, but the action taken by surgeon is not okay? Right, so that's the question we have here. And I see again, Sebastian, with the doctor, there's no fork. The doctor makes the fork and forces the turn. The 5 would be the natural course of events. Yes, you're definitely on to something, and there is an attempted solution that will make use of reasoning, much like what you're saying there, Sebastian. So just hang in there, and I'll try and address your comment when we get to the first attempted solution. But like I was going to say, death from some cause, there's a person present who could intervene in the scenario which prevents the 5 deaths and leads to the death of 1. In this example, but in this example, everyone does find it to be wrong. So what is the thing? The difference between the cases. People react differently, so how are the cases different, or what is the reason that the reaction is different if there's these basic similarities? Now, Judah Thompson's discussing this trolley problem case in 1985, but in fact there was one other author who discussed the trolley problem prior to her, about 20 years before. So another mid-century woman American philosopher, her name is Philippa Foot. Okay, so this is like a very interesting and unique name that she has, but Philippa Foot. This is just the woman's name, and she is actually the first person to ever discuss the trolley problem. So it's like Thompson is writing about the trolley problem, but a generation after the original statement of it by Philippa Foot. Now, Philippa Foot thought that she had solved this problem once and for all. And what Thompson says next is, let me mention Foot's attempted solution, but show you guys today why it didn't actually work and why it does not solve the problem. So it's like Thompson wants to give the explanation of Foot's attempt at a solution, only to show why in her mind, according to her analysis, this solution doesn't really get to the bottom of why people react differently here. Okay, so Foot's solution, we're going to talk about that now. And basically what Thompson's going to do is she's going to sort of throw out what are a couple of different possible solutions that have been discussed, and she's going to try and demonstrate to the reader why they don't actually work and why they don't solve the problem. And then at the end of the paper, she's going to be like, okay, well, now I'm going to give my own solution, which I think is the right one. So we're going to have to go through the failed solutions first. So here's one, and she refers to it as Philippa Foot's solution to the trolley. Okay. So Philippa Foot, and then Sebastian, let me want to see your comment. You say, I think with the trolley, you could also look at it as though it won't hit either, and the driver is deciding which direction to go from. So from the single perspective, it's more understandable. Well, I mean, the trolley will hit at least one of the two sets of persons. It's either going to hit the individual or the set of five. So I want to understand your comment, but you're just thinking like, it's not predestined who will be killed until he makes his driver's decision. That maybe is what you're kind of hinting at. And yes, that's a point that is about to be reviewed in the Foot's attempted solution. So let's try and get to her solution though. In Foot's way of thinking about it, there are two moral principles that everyone finds pretty obvious. And she says if we just think about these two moral principles, that will show us why people react differently to these two cases. So here's one moral principle that she says is pretty clear to most people, and that is, it is worse to kill 5 than to kill 1. Okay, so what this principle says is, I think, just pretty clear. It just says, killing is bad overall. Everyone knows that. Killing would got to be one of the worst things anyone could do. But the numbers matter, basically. So killing 1 person is terrible, but killing 5, of course, is even worse. So if you had to say, like, if there's only 2 options, someone killing 5 people or 1, which one would be better? I mean, it's weird to even think about a better and a worse because both involve killing. But clearly, 5 dead is way worse than just 1. So killing 1 is bad, but killing 5 even worse. And it's hard to disagree with that, unless we have some kind of special reasons to think about who the identities of the 5 and the 1 are. If it's just a question about human life, the more loss of life, the worse. So 5 killing is worse than 1. But here's another principle side by side with that, which says it is worse to kill 1 than to let 5 die. So I kind of forget that I'm writing on the board while we have not got great resolution for the screen. Maybe, is it somewhat sharp? I mean, in context, because I'm saying it while I'm writing it, or maybe I'll also put it in the chat. So 2 principles, here we go. Okay, one thing, it is worse to kill 5 than to kill 1, and it is worse to kill 1 than to, okay, well, no, not to worry, I'll just do this anyway for your convenience. It's worth to kill 1 than to let 5 die. Okay. It also, I think, depends on how big your screen is. If you're watching it on a cell phone, it's very kind of small. If you could beam it to like a TV, that'd be pretty cool. But anyway, worse to kill 5 than to kill 1. Now about this. If the choice is between someone dying by your hand, you killing them, versus on the other hand, just not intervening to prevent 5 people from dying, it would be worse for you to cause the one death than to allow 5 people to die from whatever their already existing problem is. Okay, because killing is so bad that it is worse to kill one than to merely stand back and not intervene to prevent 5 deaths. Okay, so comparing letting 5 die with killing a person, it's worse to kill a person than to remain uninvolved while something causes 5 people to die. Okay, so if these 2 principles are correct, then Foote says it solves the trolley problem, and here's why. Because consider the choice situation of the trolley driver scenario. What is his choice? Well, his choice is this. He can either keep going forward and kill 5 people by hitting them with the trolley that he's driving, or he can switch the side of the trolley by hitting the switch, and then he'll be responsible for killing 1 person instead. So the reason it seems that everyone finds that okay to do is because he's just trying to do the thing that's less worse, you know? So if he's bound to kill 5 or 1, wouldn't it be better if he just killed fewer rather than more? Okay. On the other hand, though, what's the choice of the surgeon? Okay, think of what is his choice. So one thing he could do is kill a person to take those organs. But if he declines to do that and he does not kill the 1 innocent person, then what happens to the other 5? If they die, did the doctor kill them? Let me know. What do you think with the surgeon's case? He could do what versus what? What is his choice situation? Because I'll let you know, one of the choices is kill 1. But what is the other side of that choice for Mr. Doctor? Is it killing the other 5? Let me know. If the doctor does not intervene, then how do the other 5 people die? Because the doctor kills them? Or what? Just give me my answer one time. The question is, what's the choice of the doctor? What versus what? So you say, yeah, it's kill 1 or let 5 die. Correct. If the 5 die, obviously they don't die because they were killed by a surgeon. If the 5 die, they die of natural causes, pretty much, organ failure, you know, from whatever cause that generated their organ failure. So it's not at all that the doctor is the responsible party for the death of 5 in case they die. So with the doctor, to kill 1, he would be doing the worst thing, because it's worse for someone to die at your cause, at your hands, than it is to simply allow 5 to die from whatever was already affecting them. So if the driver intervenes, he does the thing that's not as bad, because if he doesn't prevent himself from hitting 5, then he will kill 5 instead of killing 1. But if the surgeon intervenes, he will do the worst thing, because it is worse for a person to kill somebody than to merely allow people to die, even if it's a greater number of people. So does this solve the trolley problem? Well, it looks like it does, but like I said to you, Thompson, she's just teasing us with the solution. She says, it looks like it works. Philippa Foote thought that it worked, but Thompson is here to say, sorry, no, actually, this does not solve the trolley problem. She says, we can bring this trolley problem back by simply making a slight edit to the original driver case. Okay, so what she shows next is that if we simply make a slight alteration to the features of the trolley driver scenario, the problem reappears and Foote's solution doesn't solve it. So that requires me to give you a new trolley scenario that Thompson talks about next. So next we have what she calls bystander at the switch. Okay, so here's the name of that, bystander at the switch. Bystander at the switch. So the deal here is, once again, there's a trolley. There you see the trolley. Here's this driver guy in the trolley. And it's going forward, as before, straight forward towards 5 people that are on that track. Okay, 5 people are on the track. What to do? Well, again, we have this fork in the trolley where there's 1 person on the other stretch. And the trolley's out of control. It's going towards 5. But now we got a little bit of a different thing, which is this. Imagine that our driver is incapacitated, blacked out. So I'm putting X's where his eyes should be to denote that, you know, he's currently unconscious, right? So the control area is locked. No one else can gain access to it. So with an unconscious driver, it seems like nothing could be done to switch tracks. But one thing can be done, actually. So here's a bystander. This is just a bystander standing by, walking around, having a walk maybe in the local area. And as he walks, he comes across this switch, which is clearly labeled and marked. And it says, trolley track diversion switch. Switch in case of emergency where you need to switch trolley from track A to B. Okay, so this bystander who's not on the trolley and is in this remote location nearby has the switch with him. And he therefore can perform the action that the driver is not able to perform right now, basically hitting the switch, causing it to no longer threaten the lives of 5 people, but instead to kill 1. So the question is given to the audience again, now with this modification made. And so I can ask you that same question. With the bystander, do you feel differently? Is it wrong for the bystander to flip the switch, or is it still okay? That's the question. So the only difference is it's not the driver anymore because he's passed out. It's the choice of our bystander. So if he does this and causes the trolley not to kill 5, but rather to kill 1, would you say that's okay or no? Do you feel differently when it's a bystander, or do you think it's still just as fine, morally permissible? Okay, Jerry's still okay, and I'll let you know that that's what most people feel. Yeah, that's also the overwhelming majority reaction of most people who are polled and surveyed on this example. So you guys, you have the consensus view that most have. People basically aren't fazed by the change of driver versus bystander. People say, well, it's still okay because the basic bottom line is we're still trying to prevent 5 people from dying by this oncoming trolley, and if it's 1 instead of 5, as bad as 1 person dying is, you know, people don't find that wrong. But here's the thing. In this case, there's no longer the option of Foot's solution working. He does have the option to not get involved, Naaman, but I guess the question is it okay if he chooses to do it? Not like, must he do it? But some people would go further and say it's an obligation. Minimally, though, is it permittable? Like, is it okay for him to do so morally? Like, would you say of this person, shame on you, it was wrong for you to touch the switch? If that's not what you think he would say, then you must feel that it's permissible on a moral basis. But that, again, Naaman, to be fair, doesn't mean that that we're claiming it to be an obligation. Permissible means you may. Obligatory means you must. So I think that even if you feel like he may, you could disagree that he has to. Then maybe that's what you mean. But either way, you know, we all have different moral reactions to these cases. So let me say this, though. If this is the case that we're going to compare with Transplant, then Foot's solution will no longer work. And here's why. Well, because consider the choice situation of the bystander, right? If this bystander flips the switch and intervenes and gets involved, then he is the one that redirects the course of the trolley toward 1 person. And I guess we could say that in that case, he caused the trolley to hit him, and so in a way he killed the 1. But if he doesn't touch this trolley switch, and like you said, Naaman just doesn't get involved, then what is the cause of death of the 5? Is it the bystander that killed those 5? No, right? Because he's not even driving the trolley, and he's just standing in a whole different part of space. So you could say that the choice of the bystander is kind of like the choice of the transplant surgeon. It's kill 1 by hitting a switch, or let 5 die and just allow the trolley to continue going forward. Because, right, he's not the driver, so no one could say, hey, you hit those people with your trolley. So his choice looks like it's kill 1 versus let 5 die. But it seemed that that was supposed to be the distinguishing factor that justified the different moral reactions of the audience. That when it was kill 1 versus let 5 die, it was wrong to kill the 1. But now we have a case that's parallel to that, bystander, where people say, no, it's not wrong. So the Foot-type solution, the reliance on those 2 moral principles just given, doesn't really seem to solve the problem. And this is what Thompson says is the true trolley problem. So I know earlier, who asked me to write that, Kobe, you said write the trolley problem down, and I did. But I wanted to mention that for Thompson, this is the real trolley problem, when we replace driver with bystander. So I'm going to write that again just so that that's kind of clear. The real trolley problem, and it is this question: why do most people feel that the action of bystander is not wrong, the intervention, of bystander is not wrong, but the action of surgeon is wrong. Okay, so that's the real trolley problem, according to Thompson. And she says this is not exactly so easy to solve, but she does believe she's got the solution, and we'll get to that in a minute. But Kobe, you say, you could ask if the bystander has a moral obligation to prevent the increased loss of life. But I understand that it's different because he isn't involved in the first place. Yes, I mean, he's not a passenger on the trolley. He's not the person who is in control of the trolley or its controls, like the driver. But he's on the scene, and he's uniquely positioned to prevent a greater amount of loss of life. So most people don't find fault morally with his intended action if he just tries to cause this trolley to not hit the 5, instead to hit the 1. And another thing, I mean, this is kind of, I would hope you would have already assumed this, but in these hypotheticals, we have to imagine like perfect information. Like this guy, he has like total clear knowledge of how the switch works and exactly how effective it is. It's not like he's able to sort of debate and guess, and you could say, well, who really knows if the switch works? He's just passing by it. So we have to build those little kind of unrealistic elements into the hypothetical too. So, right, now we have this problem facing us. Foote thought it could be solved by saying that when the driver acts, he's just killing less rather than more. But if it's bystander, which replaces the driver case, then it's not a case of kill 1 versus kill 5. It's kill 1 versus let 5 die. And then it becomes parallel in structure to the transplant case, and still we have different moral reactions from people. So what's leading to these different moral reactions? So there's another attempted solution that follows after this, which Thompson also thinks ultimately is going to fail. She calls it the Kantian solution. So it has to do with Kant's moral principle, that you should never treat a human being as a means to an end. It's going to take me a little time to explain the basic nature of that different solution, and it's going to take some time to explain how she thinks it fails. But that's kind of the next step in the essay here. What I wanted to say to you guys too, before letting you go, is that this trolley problem, there's a whole bunch of interesting pop culture interest in it, I think, right now. Do any of you guys know the show The Good Place on NBC? It's like a popular sitcom. I think it's still running, but anyway, that's actually a fun show for people that are interested in philosophy and ethics, because the main character, well, one of them, Chidi, is like an ethics professor of philosophy, and so they often have like discussions and dialogue in the show about like John Stuart Mill, utilitarianism, Kantianism. Anyway, there is this one show, one episode of the show where they have the trolley problem as like a plot point, and so they actually go through iterations of the trolley scenario with Chidi and Ted Danson in the show. Also, there's a whole bunch of funny memes about the trolley problem. So for people who have like, I don't know, you think academic humor, sort of dark humor is funny, there's a page on Facebook that I follow, Trolley Problem Memes, and they have like just a million different versions of the trolley problem, and often very hilarious. But they're also kind of philosophical, and they make you think about little puzzling things in ethics. Like here's one, guys. Okay, this is not what was written in the original essays, but now we've got like a million different spin-off versions of these, kind of how people create new memes and stuff off of one original one. So like, what if you're the person over here on this side of the trolley track, and you hold the switch, which could direct the trolley towards you? Okay, how many people would have to be on this other side before you would direct the trolley towards yourself? It would be all the people, everyone in the world, or what? There's no amount of people that you'd sacrifice your own life for. I don't know, just a random thought. So the trolley problem memes, they go through all kinds of weird versions of the examples like this. And another one, it was like, you found the guy that put them on the tracks, so the trolley problem was solved. Like, I don't know, just funny stuff like that. But anyway, philosophy humor, sometimes maybe it's just something that I kind of enjoy and like, but at the end of the day, I'm passing it on to you guys too, so it's kind of funny. Well, anyway, I don't want to go through this too fast. I set aside 2 meetings for the trolley problem today and then Tuesday coming next. So just so that we don't run out of time too early on Tuesday, I think I'll let us go a little bit earlier today to have that additional room on the next meeting. There's also a game for the trolley problem. Oh, really? Well, I want to see that. Yeah, and here's another thing. We got all these self-driving cars now, and one thing that makes this a little bit more like relevant to reality is that when you consider the choices that the programmer of the self-driving automobiles what instructions they are given in the event of emergencies where they have to avert an oncoming collision with humans in the field of vision of the camera on the vehicle. Those programmers are kind of like, in a very large indirect sense, equivalent to the person standing here at the switch, because they have to make the decision that if the car sees, for example, that it's headed towards one group of people and it has to swerve, but in that direction there's a smaller group of people, you're the one that has to program it to determine what its instructions will be at that time, because it's an automated vehicle, but there are programming instructions that can tell it what to do by these external people. So that's like the bystander's role. Sebastian, you've seen one where they turn the lever in a way so the front of the trolley is on one track and the back is on the other, so it's a lose-lose. You know what? That's just nihilism. There's a whole bunch of dark humor about what they call multi-track drifting, okay? So that's people who are like, the goal should be to kill everybody. So try to get the trolley to spin on its side so that it just takes out all six. These are people that are trying to make fun of the whole premise that dying is bad and that killing people is bad. So they're like, the solution is try to find a way to get the trolley to hit everybody. And that's just, you know, that's just a kind of funny, like nihilistic humor. Melanie, just for clarification, the trolley problem was originally created by Philippa Foot. Yes, it was originally created by her. So if you wanted to find like the OG original version of the discussion, then you'd find it in her writing. Thompson is kind of reviving the problem in the 80s for a new generation of readers. And for whatever reason, it's of current interest even today. And I've seen a lot of references to it online and pop culture and media. So anyways, guys, just a few things, food for thought on the current essay. But I guess I'll let you guys go. Have a good weekend. And if you need anything over the weekend, let me know. Like I say, I'm going to be finishing your grading of the first essay this weekend, no later than Monday, I think, at the latest. And I'm going to send you guys the study guide for the midterm this weekend, probably tomorrow or Saturday. Okay, then. So let me know that everyone's fine and well, and I'll sign off. How's it going? Good? Okay, thanks, Angel, Melanie, and everybody else. Appreciate your attendance, and I'll be in touch. So see you soon. All right, thanks. Bye.